Hello everyone, this is part 9 of What If Naruto Got His Wish, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The rain had not diminished in its fury when Shikamaru and his two new team members left the building. Seeing that it probably would not be diminished for quite a while, he gave a heavy sigh. Yet, no matter how troublesome moving through this massive downpour might be, there was still a mission to be commenced. Shikamaru resigned himself to his fate, and gave his orders. The enemy isn't likely to make a move in this weather, he said. Anbu still patrol the area whatever the conditions are, and since all of the civilian population has retreated indoors, there is nobody to blend in with except other ninja, who will recognize them immediately as strangers. Keisuke and Neji nodded. Both of them seemed completely untroubled by the rain. Neji could see just as well in any weather, and Keisuke didn't need any eyes. In addition, both of them had long ago become used to moving in wet conditions. Neither one complained, however, at being given leave. They had good stories to tell to their allies about the meeting that had just ended. Shikamaru continued, while it would be a good time to go hunting for them without arousing any suspicion, it's probable that they've sealed up all of their hiding holes against the rain as well as against intruders. Also, it's one of the few opportunities we will have to rest and prepare. And because I don't particularly like heavy rain, my first order is to return to your homes and gather all the equipment you think can be helpful. Return here in 3 hours for your next orders. Dismissed. Ooh. The interior of Keisuke's current dwelling was very spacey, as well as traditional. From where she sat, Haruka could see a small pond through the open double doors in the room. No rain came in through the doorway, for the wide open-air walkway outside them had a roof of its own. She and Sakura were sitting at the table in what must have been a family dining room before Keisuke had converted it into his conference room. Your injuries aren't serious, Haruka-san, said Sakura beside her. The only thing that should even slow you down is the fake death blow that Neji-san gave you, and even those effects should be gone in a few hours. Neji-san is very skilled. Haruka nodded in solemn agreement. The doors behind them opened. You flatter me, Sakura-san. I am a Junin, but I am young yet, came Neji's voice from the door. He and Keisuke entered the room one after another. Modesty is no necessity in my house, Neji, said Keisuke. You are free to swagger or brag or show off as you choose. Both of them exchanged solemn grins at the reference to the arrogance of other Hyuga. Neither one was proud of that tendency of their relatives, but both knew that with all luck it would soon be changed. Haruka, though, was having different thoughts. Hyuga Neji again, huh? A feeling came to her that was completely alien. It was cold and bitter, and it gnawed at her guts. She watched as the two of them came to the table and sat down adjacent one another, across from Haruka and Sakura. So he's found himself a new partner, the best Hyuga fighter he's ever met. Blind idiot. She tried to focus on the story of the meeting that Keisuke was telling, but little of it came through. Outside, she kept her composure and looked perfectly attentive. Inside, however, she was seething without any idea why she was seething. Keisuke finished speaking, and now Neji began to talk, this time, of his uncle and his cousin. Haruka extricated herself from her thoughts and listened with genuine interest. Her old friend turned enemy and his daughter, whom Haruka had taken a liking to, were more important subjects than her own inner maelstrom. It has come down to this, Neji concluded. Hinata-sama must either cease to associate with Naruto except in the line of duty, or she must renounce her enlistment to the position of clan head, and become part of the branch house. Neither option serves our purposes, said Keisuke, who had only just heard the story himself. If she becomes branch, then she can't exert any influence over the clan at all. If she can't see Naruto at all, then Naruto will be unable to help her, and her morale will drop significantly. But, Sakura put in helpfully, she can still see him during missions. It's not a total loss. However, Neji said, Hokage-sama is not likely to send Naruto on many missions at this point. The Akatsuki have demonstrated that they are growing in power, and she does not want to risk him falling into their hands. If he's going on a mission at all, it'll have to be in or near Konoha, where Godime can keep her eyes on him, Keisuke finished. They sat in silence a moment, thinking on how to play the cards that they held. Sakura suggested, "Do you think Hinata would be watched closely? If not, we could disguise either her or Naruto. Hiyashi-sama and the council will both undoubtedly be keeping close tabs on her," said Neji. "I second that, Neji," agreed Keisuke. Haruka scowled. Then Keisuke looked to her, and said, "Haruka, I know you have certain talents that might help us here. Got anything brewing in that overgrown brain of yours?" "Oh, something's brewing, all right," she thought venomously. She fought down her inner turmoil and put on her best sadistic smile. "I might have a few ideas," she said. Haruka saw Keisuke frown for a split moment, as if he'd sensed that all was not straight with her. However, it soon vanished, replaced by his usual confidence. "All right," he said, "I know you work your dark magic best on your own, so I'll leave it to you. Do what you can without being noticed." Haruka nodded in acquiescence, for once not bothering to get him back for insulting her overgrown brain. "So," Keisuke continued, "Sakura, how much influence do you have over the Hokage? I know you have been her student, can you possibly influence the kinds of missions assigned to Naruto?" Sakura answered, "It depends on a lot of things, the level of mission assigned, how lazy she's feeling on a given day, how much sake she has had, but it's been done before. I've done it." Keisuke was pleased. "Good," he said. "If we could get Naruto a mission." "You don't have to, Keisuke," cried a voice from above. Naruto swung into the room from the roof of the open-air walkway outside, landing in the doorway dripping wet. "Sakura," he beamed, apparently very happy, "Granny Tsunade wants to see us. We've finally got ourselves a mission." "Oh, really?" said Sakura. She was wondering what everyone else was. How much of that conversation did he hear? Apparently, he had heard only the last little bits, and nothing about Keisuke's little conspiracy. "Yeah," he said, "let's go. I'm tired of sitting around on my hands doing nothing important." The group breathed a collective sigh of relief. Sakura rose from the table and went to join him. "Naruto," said Keisuke, "do you know where your mission is going to be?" "Not yet," he said. "You might have guessed already, but because of the Akatsuki, it'll probably be close to home." Naruto's grin decreased slightly. "Yeah, but still, it's something to do." Keisuke's smile widened. "That it is. Listen, Neji and I will be working with Shikamaru in the places circled on Kakashi's map. I'm sure he's shown you the one I'm talking about." Naruto nodded. "Yeah. If your mission takes you anywhere near there, which it could if it is related to this Sasuke character, watch out for us. We may be able to lend a hand when we're not too busy." Naruto's face settled on an excitable variant of determination at the mention of Sasuke. "Sure, Keisuke," he said. "Yarne." He and Sakura left the room. The three remaining sat in silence, waiting for them to get out of earshot. Then Haruka asked, "Do you think it has anything to do with the Hyuga? Or is it more likely to be about this Sasuke person?" "There is no way to know," said Neji, "until Naruto has received his orders and told us." "We can only hope for the best," Keisuke said. Another pause. Finally, Keisuke rose from the table, and Neji followed suit. "Well," announced the blind man, "I'm as prepared as I'll ever be, I guess. Just need to head into town to pick up some fresh shuriken. What about you, Neji?" "I will need to return to the Hyuga estate. Much of my equipment is there." "All right, Haruka, we'll be leaving. Feel free to come and go as you like." His back was to her as he and Neji walked to the door together. Haruka felt the twinge of that alien feeling coming on again. Neji walked out, but Keisuke turned to face her a moment before following. "Don't overdo it," he said. "Use your dark gifts, but remember that we are dealing with young teenagers here. Keep your greater capacity for mischief in check, partner." He punctuated the last word almost excessively, and Haruka felt the maelstrom within her stall. She put her wide grin back on. "Not a problem, oh mighty sightless one," she said with mock sarcasm. "I can handle myself." Keisuke grinned widely. To him, she seemed back to normal. Then he turned and was gone. Ooh. The wind and rain beat heavily upon Hinata as she trudged through the vacant streets of the village. Long ago, it had removed any sense of dryness or warmth from her, and her clothing sagged heavily around her with the accumulated water. Nobody saw her in this miserable state, and nobody came to help. Hinata little cared about these facts. They were insignificant in comparison with the terrible cataclysm that thundered in her heart. She stood at crossroads, and each of the two paths that lay before her were equally dark, equally without appeal. Forsake my father, she thought, forsake my family, and forsake leadership of the clan, or, forsake Naruto-kun. Forsake the man who gave back to me all those other things. Forsake the person that gave me myself. She looked up to the black sky and let the blazing lightning dazzle her into temporary blindness. How am I to make such a choice? She said to the heavens. Then her eyes readjusted, and she found that she had been sent an answer. Hinata-san, Keisuke said, whenever it seems that the impossible choice must be made, I have found only one method that produces effective results. Hinata looked up to the taller man with a face nearly devoid of hope, as though no method in the world would dispel her grief. Yet, somehow found the strength to oblige him. What method is that, Keisuke-san? The blind man smiled down upon her with rain-washed cheer. A hot meal, chilled booze, and a long, thorough discussion with a trusted friend. Come on, I know where we can get all three. Despite the fact that she had come out into the storm seeking solitude, Hinata found herself following Naruto's Ni-san. It slowly dawned on her that she was rather cold and hungry, and that she was most certainly in need of good advice. Keisuke-san, welcome. And you, too, Hinata-chan. Thank you, master. The usual table please, and my usual order. Actually, double that order for me, would you? Of course. Right this way. The owner of the small and well-kept tavern led Keisuke and Hinata back to a table in a solitary corner near a roaring fire. Keisuke discovered the cozy little place on his second day in Konoha, and had been coming here to eat at least once every other day since then. He'd made great friends already with several of the patrons and with the owner, who delighted in the stories that the blind man sometimes told and the dances he would perform when given enough good sake. Ano, Keisuke-san, said Hinata as the owner walked away to retrieve Keisuke's order, I do not drink. I'm not asking you to, child, said the blind man, happy to be out of the pelting rain and in his favorite seat by the fire. He stretched languidly in the chair, letting the heat wash over him and evaporate the water that soaked his clothes. I'll take all the booze. There is plenty of water here for you to drink, and there are other beverages if you prefer them. No, water is perfectly fine, said Hinata. The owner came back with Keisuke's drinks, and then the two sat in silence a while, letting the fire dry them and their clothes while they waited for the food to come. It came quickly. The staff had come to expect Keisuke's arrival and had the necessaries prepared in advance. Within 20 minutes, 2 plates of roast fowl were brought to the table, alongside rice and the soup of the day. All steaming hot. Enjoy, chimed their waitress. They did. Hinata had had little to eat today, and Keisuke, like Naruto, was never one to refuse good food. They were 2 minutes into it when Keisuke set down his utensils, took a long swig from his drink, and began speaking again. So, he said, Neji has told me what happened back home. Hinata stopped eating, looked down at her plate in painful silence. I can guess what's going through your mind, continued Keisuke. Your 2 greatest desires lie before you. Each one is behind a locked door, and you hold the master key that will open either one. Behind you, the floor upon which you stand crumbles away into the void of the past. You must enter a door, and sacrifice one of your desires to save the other. If you cannot choose a door quickly, then you yourself will fall into darkness. He stared into the flames. Hinata continued to stare into her half-eaten meal. I can relate, said the blind man. Hinata's head came up, a question framed in her face. Yes, I was once in a situation very like yours, long ago. The owner of the tavern made a show of cleaning glasses behind his counter, meanwhiling his ear to listen to what was sure to be another good story from his new regular patron. Taking another drink, Keisuke relaxed back into his chair, and began his tale. I was a boy of 13, then. I lived in a valley in the country of Stone, in a village ruled by a kindly elder man and his 3 sons. My father and I resided alone in a small house near the outskirts. By then, my mother had disappeared, left my father for another victim, no doubt, leaving us with very little to call our own. Because of this, my father was a bitter man. He had other reasons to be so bitter. he was a crippled shinobi, having lost his leg to war, and his only offspring was a blind shinobi wannabe, but this reason was the final straw, the one that irrevocably broke his spirit. He spent his days drinking and grumbling and raging to all that would hear him of his troubles and the idiocy of those who still had all their limbs. The villagers and I did what we could for him, but no care would get him back on his feet, no kind words could coax him into functioning normally. At length, the villagers decided to leave him be. I, however, continued to stay with him and care for him, though I had been offered rooms in numerous other houses. Hinata and the tavern owner, as well as a few other nearby diners, were listening attentively. This was not like any story the blind man had told in here before. It was a dark and sad tale, where all of his others had been humorous or light-hearted and jovial, telling of the misadventures of the illustrious Toad Sennin or the triumphs of the young in the face of adversity. I thought that with enough time and proper care, he would come around. So I waited, and then one day I was rewarded for my patience. My father came down with a terrible fever, and spent the night mumbling half-coherently about my mother, treachery, power, and revenge. Horrible dreams, I thought, and prepared to care for him through a long and terrible illness. But when he awakened the next morning, he was a new man. Flames danced in the mirrors of Keisuke's sunglasses, and he set his drink down upon the table. He did what he had not done for months. He stood tall in the sunshine, embraced the light, he began to eat full meals again instead of nibbling on whatever he found lying about, and he zealously absorbed himself in reading and in religion, ordinary pastimes, rather than the piteous moping about and raging that he had occupied himself with before. I thought him to have changed for the better. Keisuke shook his head, and his eyebrows slanted. I was a fool to ignore the signs that told me otherwise. I scrubbed away the cryptic seals as I would any other splotch of dirt on the floor and walls. I mopped up the bee as though it was nothing, had accidentally been spilled as my father clumsily wielded his kitchen knife against his evening meal. Foolishly I let him work his work, and waited on him like a faithful son, like nothing was wrong at all. Finally, he woke me in the middle of the night, and told me to make ready. When I asked him what for, this was his answer: for our vengeance, boy. All of the misfortune brought upon us will be undone tonight, in a single effort. I go to Gallows Hill, to call forth the being that will bring your bee of a mother to her knees, and while he's at it, burn to a crisp the shinobi who took my leg, and all their lands and wealth and their health with them. I go to call the Rokubi. I should not have been surprised, having been given countless signs. I had ignored them because I wanted to keep at least one of my parents, to retain at least some family. Yet now, he threatened to call forth a horrible demon, one that could savage villages with the twitch of a tail, just so that he could revenge himself upon a handful of people. Immediately, I knew that this was the reason that he had become so happy after his illness. He had seen in his dream that this was what he would do. For a long time, I sat in my bed, wondering what I would do. My childhood before my mother abandoned us had been happy, and I loved my father as much as any other boy would love his. I had cared for him in his most hopeless hour for that love. Yet I also loved my village, and I knew that allowing my father to call this beast would place it in danger. To sacrifice my father's love and save the villages, or go with my father down his path of destruction. A choice that I could not bear to make. Yet now I was forced to make it. I thought long and hard, trusting to my father's disability to slow him and afford me the time I needed to think. At last, I decided to go to my father, attempt to convince him that his path was the wrong one. If he disbelieved, then I was resolved to side with him and hope that his wrath did not destroy our home, as well. Keisuke paused a moment, seeming to relive the incident. His face flushed with anguish, and the whole tavern hung upon his words. My hesitancy nearly cost me my life. I arrived in time to hear the first roar of the Rokubi, and feel the huge chakra of the six-tailed monster as it raged down towards my home. Its breath was lightning, and it left destruction in its wake. I could hear the first screams of the dying, and I wished that I had eyes, so I could weep for the death of my home. And then I heard my father laughing. He stood at the top of Gallows Hill, exultant in his success. "Do you understand what I have done?" he asked. "Do you know the power that I control? With this, my revenge is assured, and then some. I will be master of the lands that once were the homes of my enemies. I will be the conqueror of all that stands in my way. The Rokubi is my sword, a sword against which there is no armor. And I did it by myself, no thanks to you, boy. You were indecisive, useless, weak. The pain that I felt seared my soul. If I had been quicker to decide, had reached my father earlier, I might have persuaded him to cease his ambition of revenge. And if not, I would at least have kept my father's good faith. Now I had neither my home nor my father. I grieved sorely that night. Yet through my grief, I knew that there was yet one thing I could do, and must do if I wanted to preserve myself, and save all that my father planned to destroy. I had had limited training in the shinobi arts, despite my father's insistence that it would be useless to a blind one such as myself. I moved swiftly and, drawing a kitchen knife that I had brought in my pack, I stabbed my father through the heart. The room was deathly silent as Keisuke drained the last of his booze. Because of my hesitancy, I lost my father, and killed him by my own hand. Because I put my father before the village, the Rokubi transformed my home into the ruined waste that was known afterward as the grave. Though I had ensured that it would not happen again, the damage caused was irreparable. He stopped speaking abruptly, and returned to his food. It had cooled a bit, but was still warm enough to eat by his standards. Everyone else, however, kept staring at him. For a while, he seemed not to notice this, but eventually he looked up and glared around the room, the firelight playing on his black sunglasses like flames in the abyss. The story's over, people. You'd best get back to your meals before they cool to ice. What his glare said was, I don't want to say any more. It hurts. Leave me alone. Though the other patrons had plenty of questions to ask, they did what they were told. When angered, intoxicated, and in pain, a shinobi can be quite dangerous to people around him. The owner pressed his luck, brought forth another drink in hopes that the blind man would loosen up. No thank you, master, said Keisuke. Any more and I think I shall become quite ridiculous. Thwarted, the master bowed and left him alone. When he was certain that nobody was paying him any more attention, Keisuke turned to Hinata, and spoke quietly to her. My advice to you, Hinata-san, he said, is this: go along with your father's rules for now. If you chose the other path, then you could never return to the main house again. However, while walking this path, you are always free to change your mind. And as time passes, other options may become apparent to you. He took another bite of meat, chewed and swallowed, then leaned in and whispered so that any Hyuga spy would find it impossible to hear. Also, let us not forget that you may still see him on missions. There will be hope, in those times, for mission priorities supersede the priorities of the clan. Always remember that you have allies. My friends and I will do all we can to make the limited time you have enjoyable, and work towards opening more doors to you. Then he called out to the owner. Master, the bill, please. I believe we have had enough. After paying, Hinata followed Keisuke out of the tavern. They found that though the black clouds still hovered in the sky, the rain had ceased. Once outside and alone, Keisuke turned to her. Don't delay, Hinata-san, he said. When you return home, immediately make it clear that you intend to side with your father, or disaster may find you in your house. Yes, Keisuke-san. Hinata didn't like the idea, but Keisuke's speech had given her some heart back. She, at least, would not have to kill her own father, and her clan would not destroy the village if she abided by their rules and waited for conditions to improve. Don't look so grim, child, he said to her, smiling. I've got a feeling that your luck will improve soon. Don't ask me how I know. I just do. Hinata smiled back at him. Thank you, Keisuke-san. I hope you are right. Keisuke nodded cheerily. Well, I'll be off to join Shikamaru and Neji. Keep an eye out for us, we'll be sniffing around for sound nin in the area. He waved goodbye, and leaped over a fence, moving swiftly towards the Hokage Tower. Hinata, now resolved to her course of action, began the trek back to the Hyuga compound. Ooh. Morning greeted the Hyuga house with obsidian skies and a black mood. Hinata's claim that the photographs had been planted in her bedroom had been grudgingly bought, but now she noticed that certain members of the clan avoided her whenever possible, and her father, though happy that she had chosen to do the honorable thing and side with him, was undeniably under heavy stress. Hinata herself was not in the best of moods. She had hope, but the present situation was not at all desirable. Everywhere she went in the house, she felt the presence of other Hyuga watching her. They stayed with her through her morning practice, breakfast, and meditation, dogging her in the hope or fear that she had been lying the night before. Hinata was relieved when she left the house and felt their presence begin to fade. Perhaps one or two still followed her, but they were very skilled if they did. She could pick up no trace of them. This gave her some comfort. Then her comfort was blown away as Naruto landed before her. Ooh. Haruka hid Hinata's two unconscious pursuers in a back alley, covering them with garbage from a nearby dumpster. Among them she recognized the leader of the capture team from the previous day. Giving him one last good kick, she returned to watching Hinata, who, she saw, had just been accosted by Naruto. Naruto-kun, started Hinata, good morning. Haruka could see she was anxious to get away, her father's ultimatum fresh in her mind. Yet, the older Hyuga could also see that she wouldn't be anywhere else, if she had her say. Unfortunately, both Hyuga women knew, she didn't. Hey, Hinata, greeted the blonde shinobi, standing over her and beaming. I'm glad you finally came out of your house. I've been waiting out here all morning for you. Glad to know your dad didn't K you for showing up late. Yes, Naruto-kun. I'm quite fine. I'd better be going. Oh, questioned Naruto, where are we going? Haruka, who had dressed herself casually and covered her head to avoid recognition, moved out from her hiding place and casually strolled towards the pair, with Naruto's back to her. Hinata's foot was in the perfect place. If she didn't move, Haruka could, accidentally, trip her, causing her to fall forward into the blonde's waiting arms. Anno, said Hinata, I'm afraid that I must go alone, Naruto-kun. I appreciate your offer of company, but... Haruka was almost in range. 10 more paces and she'd have it. No buts, Hinata. If it's anywhere but your house, I'm following you there. Granny Tsunde's orders. Haruka, who'd been in the middle of her foot sweep, halted the attack too late to stop her forward momentum, and stumbled forward. Excuse me, she said, altering her voice to an un-Haruka-like pitch and scurrying off to find a new observation post. Hinata, once she had taken her eyes off Haruka, asked, Tsunade-sama's orders. Yup, confirmed Naruto, smiling with the brightness of the sun that hid behind the black clouds. Then, Hinata said, her face dawning in amazed comprehension, then it's a mission. I'm your personal guard while Neji is on his other mission, finished Naruto, blazing with happiness. About time, too. I've been waiting forever for her to put me to use. Hinata's mood shifted from amazement, to unbelief, to barely containable joy. Silently, she thanked every god whose name she knew, thanked her ancestors for granting her this opportunity. And thank you, Keisuke, she thought, for sharing your wisdom with me. Naruto-kun really knows how to choose his friends. From the shadows, Haruka observed all of this with extreme satisfaction. This mission of Naruto's was a gold mine of opportunities, just waiting for her to capitalize on them. With this, pretty much the only thing I can't do is marry them, she thought. Keisuke, you had better be grateful, you blind bastard. We'll see who is the best Hyuga fighter you've met. When I'm through, there are more ways to fight than with hands and feet and steel. She rose up to stand tall on the roof she had been lying on, watching the two of them head off to wherever Hinata was leading him. Most likely, it was to her team's practice. Don't think that's all you'll be doing today, though, little ones, she said, her sadist's glow lighting up her features. Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan, I didn't think I'd ever be doing this to you. But on my honor, both of you must become my playthings while this mission lasts. It is for your future, so please do not hold it against me. As Keisuke says, being manipulated isn't bad as long as it feels good. Lightning flashed above her, accentuating her determination and the anticipatory enjoyment of the games to come. Naruto was satisfied with his new mission. This fact seemed odd to him. Normally, Konoha's loudest and most surprising ninja enjoyed fast-paced, action-packed, and dangerous assignments that sated his hunger for adventure and got him home in time to sate his hunger for ramen. Now his duty encompassed neither adventure nor ramen. He was to follow his untalkative charge wherever she went outside of her home, avoiding combat where necessary, not even to practice with her teammates, for Tsunade insisted that he must be in condition to fight when his charge was not, and camp near her front gate, going nowhere, including Ichiraku Ramen, until she emerged again. By all accounts, he should have been bored out of his mind. Yet he wasn't. In Hinata's presence, he found himself with a bountiful pool of activities to occupy himself with. Naruto began to think that he would never tire of watching the girl fight, his eyes drinking in every graceful step, every subtle and deadly strike. During breaks in her training, he invested a considerable amount of time endeavoring to make her laugh and smile, which proved both easy and gratifying to do. When he roused himself to go and patrol the area around the practice field, he expended pent-up energy in flashy acrobatics and going out of his way to look extra alert, using every opportunity to show off. And when he could not do these things, Naruto found that he could keep himself busy with just himself and his thoughts, something that he'd always had trouble doing in the past. Staggering amounts of thoughts ran through his mind all at once, all of them related, all on a different place of the emotional spectrum. For example, there was awe, damn, she's really developed while I was gone. I haven't seen anyone move like that, not even Haruka Nei-chan on her best day. And then there's the more physical developments. Panic, how can I be thinking that about her now? I never used to before. Besides, I never really knew her that well even 3 years ago, we barely spoke at all. Contentedness, Sal right. I'll get to know her plenty well on this mission. Just chill for now and watch the show. Unease, is it alright to watch that closely? No matter how hard I try to stop them, my eyes eventually wander where they aren't supposed to. Rebellion, since when do I give a s about what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm not supposed to? My very existence breaks rules in the minds of half the village. Hopefulness, besides that, she sure seems to smile at me a lot, maybe she knows I'm looking, and doesn't care. Maybe it's what she wants. Pessimism, as if nobody gives a damn about me or who I look at, unless I'm looking at them, which is when they're afraid. It's been that way since way before I left. Sakura is living proof. I can make friends, but I'm too block-headed and loud to go beyond that, and the old folks would discourage the daughters getting close to the QB kid anyway. Rationalization, but I can't draw a conclusion from just one example. Sakura was only the first try, there are tons more opportunities in the world. Like Hinata. Uncertainty, am I sure that I want to try, though? It could be that I just like how she looks now, after all this time away. That's what made me try for Sakura. All these things and more ran rampant in his head until he found something else to do, and then returned when the distraction was over. Fortunately, he found plenty of distractions, so the headache-inducing train of thought was allowed little time to move forward, being constantly derailed. Therefore, Naruto was largely undaunted and fulfilled his mission duty efficiently. Late afternoon came, bringing with it a light rain and an end to Team 8's practice session. After waving a quick goodbye to Kiba and Shino, Naruto and Hinata made their way into the village, Hinata laughing lightheartedly as Naruto attempted to dodge raindrops. She didn't blame him for wanting to move around a little, he certainly wasn't getting much exercise just watching from the sidelines, and she was fond of his humorous antics. Inside, Hinata had found her center again. She had lost it since the return of the loud, confident, heroic blonde, having been first seized with powerful desire to impress him, then rendered momentarily overconfident, for her, and complacent in the rush of happiness, and most recently ground to pieces by her father's ultimatum. With Keisuke's counsel and Naruto's new assignment, she had recovered her hope, but she knew what the price would be to keep that hope alive. Therefore she enjoyed his company while she could, and held faith that circumstances would improve, but she did not plan to push her luck, knowing the consequences of going past a professional relationship. Only one thing concerned her. She had sworn that she would help Naruto and Sakura to find their lost teammate, and the fact that Tsunade had decreed that she needed constant protection and chosen Naruto set back the search effort, having tied Naruto up in other matters. She might have requested another guard, but her happiness at having an excuse to spend time with him had been precedent in her mind until it was too late to protest. This nagged at her mind, but she did not see how it would help to tell anyone, and Naruto didn't seem to mind. She kept quiet. Thusly, the two teenagers began moving towards the Hyuga compound, both keeping their secrets, both keeping the greater desires in check, but in good spirits regardless. The day had been pleasant and free of chaos. An outside force had other ideas. Lack of chaos, to her, was directly related to lack of progress. This was especially true because of the nature of her opponents, who fought for dominance in this whole game by laying down order, the opposite of chaos. Naruto, while normally a harbinger of chaos, was ineffectual. His chaos turned for the moment into himself. It was up to her to inject third-party chaos into the situation and turn things back in her favor. It is unsurprising, considering the determination of this force, that the two teenagers' orderly march to Hinata's home suffered a change in destination. Naruto suddenly stopped trying to evade the rainwater and stared upwards in astonishment. Beside him, Hinata halted and followed his gaze to see what had caught his attention. Her eyes fell upon a gigantic billboard that had most certainly not been present when they had left that morning. It was gaily colored and sported an incredibly tasty-looking bowl of ramen. Below this glorious image was the caption, "New and powerful flavor. ICHIRAKU ramen." "Whoa!" exclaimed Naruto, having never seen ramen of that kind in his life. "That looks awesome. I have to remember to try that kind once this mission is over." Hinata found the sign curious. She recognized the flavor of ramen on display, but she knew for a fact that it had been first served over 3 months ago. She herself had eaten that first serving. Why is he advertising that flavor now? She wondered. Did he come up with another new flavor and have the wrong kind put on display? Naruto's stomach broke her out of her wondering by calling attention to itself rather loudly. Hinata noticed a grimace on the blonde's face. It suddenly came to her that he must be having little time to get food, being forced to remain with her when she was out of the house and in the house's general vicinity when she wasn't. Her assessment was correct. The poor boy was starved. "Anno, Naruto-kun," she started gently, "you haven't eaten anything in a while, have you?" "Nah, I had breakfast," he said. "If you can call it that," he thought bitterly. Living on insects and other things that live in trees was life-sustaining, as Keisuke and Jiraiya both taught, but it was nowhere near enjoyable. "Ah, I see," said Hinata, "then, you should go and eat. You won't be able to function properly if you aren't well fed." "Huh," Naruto said, gawking at her. He could have sworn that he had just told her that he'd had food today, not that he hadn't. Maybe he had thought that last bit aloud. He pondered over it a while, then shrugged it off. "But, Hinata, I can't leave you to walk back alone. My orders are to guard you, and there's no way I'm going to abandon the mission. I gave my word by accepting the mission, and I'll keep it." Naruto's stomach protested, but he fought it down. Not many things could dissuade him from his ramen, but his integrity, and Hinata, were worth it. Hinata thought this over. She knew that he was doing the right thing for the mission by getting her home, where she would be safest. Also, going right home would not arouse any suspicion among her clan that she was not holding to the terms of Hyashi's decree. Yet, she worried for Naruto, who obviously felt like he was going to waste away. He'd even said that he'd skipped breakfast, without his precious ramen. She came to the conclusion that allowing Naruto to eat was the best course. If her family did suspect, she could make the excuse that she was going to meals with him in order to keep her bodyguard in fighting shape. "Naruto-kun," she said, her face growing slightly warm at the prospect of dining with him, "if you like, I can accompany you." He was in her face immediately. "Really?" he asked. His eyes were wide with hope. "Ah, yes, all right." The boy leaped 2 feet in the air, ecstatic at his good fortune. "If you're there with me, then I'm not hurting the mission." "You're really nice, Hinata." "Thanks." Flushing at the compliment and smiling, Hinata followed him as he strode happily down the street that led to his favorite restaurant. "Ooh, welcome, Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan," said Haruka. "Yo, Ayame-ne-chan," said Naruto, grinning cheerfully. "Old man, let me have some of that new flavor I've been hearing about. It sounds great." "Certainly, Naruto. Just a few minutes. What about you, Hinata-chan?" I'll have the same. Thank you, Tsuki-san." Haruka was pleased with her handiwork. The genjutsu to create the enormous sign had been no trouble, but timing the illusion to alter what Hinata was hearing out of the boy had proven troublesome. She'd nailed it perfectly, however, and they had come to Ichiraku forthwith. She stood before them now in the guise of Ichiraku Tsuki's daughter, Ayame. The true Ayame slept peacefully underneath her own bed, having been skillfully drugged and hidden while her father was busy with serving his customers. The old man had been convinced entirely that his daughter had merely been on bathroom break when Haruka returned. The disguised Hyuga took some time to assess the situation. She had dispatched 2 of Hinata's tails, both of them Hyuga branch that Neji had been kind enough to identify as Hiashi loyalists. Agents of the advisory council could still be nearby, but Haruka did not detect them, and would be able to if they decided to move. Both teenagers had been successfully lured into the ramen restaurant, where they were vulnerable to her machinations while relatively safe from outside interference, since Neji had volunteered to be on the lookout for her while carrying out his mission in that area. Haruka felt a momentary pang of jealousy. She would rather have been the one combing the village, earning her keep in her new home, and chiding Keisuke for his bumbling idiocy. Yet she cast it aside. Neji and Shikamaru were perfectly capable of filling that role, but only she, Haruka, had what Keisuke called the dark gifts, which would make the manipulation of these children not only possible, but fruitful. Her mind back on the present, Haruka remembered that the two were about to share their first unsupervised meal together. She knew that she couldn't tamper with the food, as Tsuki was seeing to the preparation of his favorite guests' meals fully by himself, but there were other ways to take advantage of mealtimes. She watched, she cleaned dishes, and waited. Finally, Ichiraku's newest creation made its way to the table where Naruto and Hinata sat. The blonde stared hungrily and breathed in the delicious smell. "Oh, it's even better looking in reality," he exclaimed. "Anno, might it not seem better because you are able to smell it as well as see it?" Hinata suggested. "Nah, for a ramen fanatic like me, the real deal always looks better than an illustration, no matter what it smells like. Although, I gotta admit it does smell really good, too." Haruka saw an opportunity, performed a few silent hand seals beneath the counter. To Naruto's statement, she added 2 words through genjutsu, "Like you, Hinata." Direct hit, Haruka thought, watching Hinata's face go crimson. Naruto was too intent on his food to notice his companion's reaction, which was just as well, for he might have been confused. Hinata did not say anything, but stared into her bowl until she overcame herself and was able to eat. Naruto had eaten only a single mouthful before he burst out with appreciation. "Incredible," he said. "Better than the last new flavor I tried, and I thought that one would never be beaten." Hinata, still tinted pink, brought her head back up. "I'm glad that you enjoy it, Naruto-kun. I'll pay for more, if you like," she trailed off. Haruka again edited in her own touch, "Such a muscular, handsome body shouldn't be starved." Another success. Naruto was dumbstruck for a moment, his mouth agape, his eyes boring into his companion, his next mouthful dangling from his chopsticks before him. Finally, he recovered himself and gulped it down, then raised his free hand to scratch his head. A sheepish grin spread over his face. He, thanks," he said, at a loss for any other response to the compliment. Hinata, thinking he was thanking her for the food, said, "You're very welcome, Naruto-kun," and gave a small smile of her own. She was having an excellent time, Haruka could tell, moving up to being complimented on her good grooming habits and sharing a meal with him on the same day. And now that their minds are both going in the right direction. Haruka arranged for Ichiraku Tsuki to become suddenly and incapacitatingly tired by tapping a few specific pressure points as she accidentally stumbled into him. Ayami," he said, laying his big hand on her shoulder, "your father is exhausted. Would you close up the shop for me? Naruto-kun may finish his ramen and there is more prepared for him under the counter when he calls for it, but I cannot serve anyone else today." "Of course, Otu-san," Haruka said, eager smile on her lips. She helped him wobble up the stairs to his room, and watched him collapse onto his bed. Then, satisfied, she went to close the door to the shop. Sure enough, Naruto had already finished his first bowl and was ready for the second. Haruka grabbed one of the 3 that were waiting below the counter and brought it over, then headed into the back of the kitchen. She spent a few moments looking about, and then located her prize. The maniacal grin that characterized the sadist's glow crossed the face of Ayami, and Haruka poured a glass. She was just in time, for soon after, the call came from the lobby. "Ayami-ne-chan. Water, please." 18 hours into the search, the team had found nothing. Keisuke knew that this was not because there was nothing to find, but still he could not stop himself from being frustrated. There were many places he would rather be, and he was anxious to hear of the developments with Naruto. However much he wanted it to end quickly, it didn't seem that it was going to. At last, Keisuke finished sweeping his section of the zone around the Hokage Tower, and moved off to find Shikamaru and take his rest. He was glad to do so. He'd had a long day with no successes, and sleep was high on his priority list. Alas, Murphy's Law forbade his rest today. As he moved, Keisuke became aware of a presence at his back. It was stealthy and clever, vanishing from his perception when he ceased moving, and doubtless would have fooled anyone below Junin level in ninjutsu. It had even fooled Keisuke for 18 hours. But now that Keisuke was not distracted by his mission, his fifth sense picked up the follower easily. Displeased, the blind man picked up his pace. It could be one of the Hyuga behind him, but it could also be an agent of the hidden enemy, come to find out who was looking for them. Either way, he would have to let one of his teammates know. Staying in the open to avoid ambush, Keisuke hoped to find Shikamaru quickly and have the nuisance dealt with. As he passed through the next search zone, however, it was not Shikamaru he found, but Neji. Deciding that this was better than nothing, Keisuke hailed the young Hyuga genius. "Keisuke-san, are you finished with your area?" asked Neji. "With my section of it, yes," came the reply. "I think my radio's faulty. I can't get a hold of anyone at all. I was going to call Shikamaru to report off for my break, but, you know, bad luck found me." He jerked his hand up to the earpiece of his radio, his thumb pointing behind him. Neji recognized the code phrase for trouble, and the hand gesture for I'm being tailed. "I'll radio him for you. Can I offer you some insect repellent? That bite on your arm looks painful," he replied, using the code phrase for want me to help. Keisuke nodded. "I'd appreciate it. Do you have the variety that works against eye-gouging gnats?" This variety of bug, aside from being fictional, represented a foe that defeated the senses and was the code for enemy type unknown. "I might," said Neji. "I'll finish up my sweep, and then leave you a can on your doorstep as I return home. I hope that bite does not trouble you greatly." They exchanged silent nods and moved off in opposite directions. Keisuke moved first in the direction of his house, then deviated, moving off down a dark back alley. He felt the presence mark his every move. At last, Keisuke thought it was safe enough, and began to run. He did not run extremely fast, but allowed the presence to keep up. He twisted down several more shadowed alleyways, giving the illusion that he was trying to lose the tail when in reality he was trying to draw it out. When it seemed that the tail was not going to reveal itself, Keisuke decided that he would have to smoke the enemy out. He waited until he had a good approximation of the presence's location, trajectory, and speed, then whipped around and flung 4 shuriken into its roughly estimated path. The resulting yowl of pain told Keisuke that one of them had hit home, an unexpected success. His enemy stopped and located by sound, Keisuke took the opportunity to seize him. "Neji, do it now," he called. Neji emerged from his own stealth and struck like a bullet. Tenketsus in the man's shoulders and legs were struck in a split second, sealing chakra to them. There would be no fleeing or resisting for this spy. He was captured. Ooh. At the moment when Keisuke was grappling with his captive, his partner was spending her time idly behind the counter at Ichiraku Ramen, hoping for satisfactory results and growing more frustrated by the minute. Haruka had hoped that getting Naruto plastered would loosen him up, bring forth the natural chaos that so often altered circumstances around him. At least, that was what had happened the last time he had been drunk. The resulting calamity had transformed Keisuke and Haruka and the entire room full of diners from weary travelers into a roaring and guffawing, merry party that lasted through the night until both Naruto and his illustrious sensei, Jiraiya, had at last fallen asleep at 7 in the morning, exhausted from their night of wild and impulsive buffoonery. During that night, words had flown from the young ninja's mouth that would have been perfectly happy to stay hidden comfortably away in the recesses of his brain. Recalling that instance, the Hyuga outcast planned to recreate the experience while the younger Hyuga was listening. Things were not going as planned, however. Haruka's wish to have Naruto sing out secrets like a happy canary was answered, but she had forgotten to stipulate to the god of wish granting that the secrets should have something to do with Hinata. Infuriatingly, the words that slushed out from between mouthfuls of ramen concerned the entire range of conversational topics excluding Hinata. Though Hinata seemed to find it interesting that Naruto had once kicked Erosenin so hard that he'd been perfectly capable of walking in any direction except forward, and doubtless was surprised to be told that Naruto was in possession of the only recording of Uchiha Sasuke running face first into a brick wall, and couldn't quite believe that Aburame Shino had once pranced around at a funeral spouting nonsense about a gold-sniffing fox, Haruka was not so entertained. While every moment the kids were having fun together was a plus, the outcast had something to prove and was in a hurry to triumph. At one point she had been sorely tempted to make use of a mild aphrodisiac, but perhaps thankfully, Keisuke's warning managed to find its way through to her consciousness. Keep your greater capacity for mischief in check, partner. Oh, the fun that I could have had, were it not for you nagging at the reins of my conscience, she thought. Cursed be the day I found you. She looked to the pair again. Naruto was still clowning, Hinata still laughing, the ramen still being eaten in between. One objective, at least, had been accomplished. Naruto was in very high spirits, and the chains of inner struggle that had shackled his chaos were rusted to the point of breaking. One good tug would snap them off, but Haruka could not be the one to do it, since she had interjected too much already with her illusionary technique. If most of the exchange came from an outside source rather than the two of them, then any happy situation that developed would be meaningless, a false good time produced by foreign means. Haruka had to find a way to make one of them get the ball rolling back in the right direction. Watching for a moment, she found one. Hinata, being sober, Haruka didn't want to risk the intelligent girl suspecting outside involvement or send the girl home tipsy to a suspicious family, had not fully been divested of her cares. Haruka could see in the young Hyuga's eyes that she had something on her mind. An idea formed in the outcast's head. The Hyuga taught that a strong flow of chakra was directly related to the overall productiveness of a human being. This concept applied to every aspect of human functionality, including the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the social. While most Hyuga chose to emphasize the fact that this meant one could cripple an enemy by shutting off chakra flow, and trained themselves accordingly, Haruka had given her personal development a double focus, learning to cripple through stopping flow, and learning to enhance by increasing it. This made her a rarity in the clan. Keisuke liked to say, every now and then, that chance favored the prepared mind. Haruka, not wanting to completely agree with him but not placing herself in direct opposition, either, adapted it to her own version. Chance favors the open-minded. However one chose to say it, Haruka was one of the few among her brethren to see this wisdom at an early age, and now was going to benefit from it. She brought up the fourth and final bowl for Naruto to polish off, and skillfully tripped herself over a leg of Hinata's chair. As she grabbed for the wooden back of the chair to catch herself, her flailing hand made a detour to the back of Hinata's neck, poking a less used tenketsu there. Hinata jerked in her seat, and for a moment the older Hyuga feared that her maneuver had been too bluntly precise, that she had been discovered. Fortunately, however, the ramen was saved to Naruto's great happiness and Hinata relaxed, to Haruka's great relief. Watch yourself there, Ayame-ne-chan, said Naruto, rising to help her up and nearly falling over the seat himself. Thank you, Naruto-kun, Haruka, Ayame said, smiling appreciatively. She hurried back behind the counter and into the kitchen among the dirty dishes, letting the water run to give the impression that she was cleaning. Haruka listened just out of the doorway to the lobby, hoping that her little tap had done its work. If it had, then Hinata would be finding herself energized, light, and more easily motivated. Granted, the aftermath might not have been as entertaining as that produced by administration of the aphrodisiac, but Haruka would have to settle for it or Keisuke would be lecturing her in her head for days, boring her to tears. Eventually, the desired results were achieved. Naruto finished his ramen, gave one last drunken rant about how great it was, mangling many words in the process and leaving dents in the table with his over-expressive hand gestures, and thanked Hinata profusely for allowing him to have it. Hinata replied as Haruka had hoped, not settling for a mere, "You're welcome," but speaking of what troubled her mind. Naruto-kun, she began, I'm sorry. I know you would rather be somewhere else right now, looking for your teammate, Uchiha-san. I could have insisted on a different bodyguard, freed you to keep searching. Or, don't worry about it, said Naruto, lounging back in the chair and patting his sated gut. There's lots worse missions I could have got, sides this one. Sides, I can still look there the bastard, As long as you decide that's where we're going. Hinata was pleased that Naruto was happy with his mission, but continued unimpeded. I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you. My father, This was the difficult part. How was she to explain her father's ultimatum without giving anything away? He does not want me to do anything out of the ordinary again, after I went with you to the laboratory. Part of it is because of the danger, and part of it is because, well, my father really does not like you, Naruto-kun. Her face was dark as she finished. She had not lied, but she hadn't exactly given any great detail as to why Hiashi hated him. Naruto filled in the blank. It's the damn fox's fault. He bellowed. Tars all the old-timers think oh me. His face was red with alcohol-enhanced anger as he dropped his eyes towards his navel, where was written the seal that kept the fox chained. This wasn't what Haruka had been expecting. However, in her present position, she could do nothing without risking her cover, and she most certainly didn't want to let on to either teenager that she had been playing them. Demon brat, QB kid, damned fox, every one o' those senile bastards can't see anything but the damn fox. Naruto rose from the table, banging his glass down upon it in fury. His other hand clutched at his abdomen, knotting the shirt there as though the fingers yearned to seize the QB within and rip it out. Hinata could see that a storm was brewing in the object of her affections. She knew the look in his eyes, the one of feral rage that he'd had when he rose from the D to take vengeance against Hiroto. She had no desire to meet the creature within him again. More than that, she was concerned for the blonde, and she could not sit on the side and let him be consumed by fury at her father, a fury that would do him more harm than good. She also got to her feet. Naruto-kun. Crap, he said. He appeared to have forgotten for the moment that he was in Hinata's company. His eyes lost their feral gleam and grew wide with fear. One of his friends, who had trusted in him, had just found out that he was QB's container. You weren't supposed to know that, damn my mouth. Thankful that his anger was gone, Hinata now felt relieved that all she had left to dispel was the fear of rejection, a fear that she was very intimately acquainted with and was glad to remove from another person. It's all right, Naruto-kun, she said. For some reason, she was feeling less and less inhibited by her natural shyness today. It was still there, a presence in her mind, but she had power over it. She moved to embrace him, adding physical affirmation to her verbal reassurance. I already knew. Naruto was completely dumbfounded. He had been shocked by her actions on the first evening he walked back to the village with her after practice, but this was something else entirely. Was this really the same girl who, 3 years ago, had been unable to so much as touch him without being in danger of losing consciousness? Her face was very pink at the moment, true, but his sluggish mind was having trouble registering that as a valid identifying trait. Then her words came through to his understanding. Oh, he said. You did. Yes, Sakura-chan told me. She did, huh? It slipped his mind that he hadn't even known that Sakura knew. His mind was preoccupied with how nice it felt being pressed this close to the Hyuga girl. The voices in his mind that had been bothering him about this earlier, namely panic, unease, pessimism, and uncertainty, were drowned out by the booze he'd been slipped. They said nothing, and neither did he. Hinata, for her part, had many things to say, that she didn't care what anyone else said, that she knew he was a good human being, that she had seen that he was stronger than the demon within, but her words were choked off as she was also enjoying the hug. The rippling musculature that she'd glimpsed in the first practice he had attended and the images handed to her by Haruka did much justice to how they felt pressed against her. She was bewildered by the fact that she'd been able to actually do it and not lose her mind. The repressed shyness in the recesses of her mind screamed danger, but something had enabled her to overpower it without real difficulty. Lost in their respective thoughts, neither said anything for several seconds. Haruka, looking through the walls, was astonished that her ploy had worked so well. This was exactly what she had been looking for. It was a shame that Keisuke was not there to witness her great handiwork. But there's always technology to substitute for him, she thought. Walking out to the lobby, she called, I'm going to close up. Naruto attempted to turn and look at the sudden noise, forgetting that he had an attachment. The result was a drunken Naruto on the floor with a dazed-looking Hinata laying on top of him. Even better. Haruka chortled inwardly, reveling in her success. While the two of them were still having difficulty with realizing where they were, a camera clicked away unnoticed for 2 or 3 seconds. Finally, Hinata's shyness reasserted its dominance, and she leaped off of Naruto as though he were on fire. This was just as well, for Sakura walked into the ramen restaurant at that precise moment. Sheesh, said the pink-haired girl, I thought I'd never get away from her. Hinata-chan, your younger sister sure knows how to be a nuisance to her bodyguards. Why couldn't Tsunade-sama have let the Hyuga protect their own people, like she wants? That way we wouldn't have to listen to her compla. Naruto, what are you doing on the floor? Sakura received no answer. Naruto was unconscious. Or, what the hell? Sakura exclaimed. Don't tell me that after all that, I have to lug his ramen-loaded carcass back to his tent. Hinata had recovered herself, and was able to speak in Naruto's defense. Please, Sakura-chan. He was very bored today, and exercised extensively to entertain himself. And he's just had his first meal in almost a day, so you can imagine how he overcompensated. That sounds just like him, all right, sighed Sakura. Well, there's no helping it, I guess. Want to help me carry him again? Go ahead, Sakura-chan, Hinata said. I'll join you after I pay the bill. Sakura huffed, not anticipating a fun journey home. All right. Grabbing Naruto roughly by his legs, she hauled him out of the door. Outside, Hinata heard her exclaim, Geez, Naruto. How much can one guy eat? Considering that it's Naruto-kun, commented Haruka, Ayami as she turned to leave, there's probably no limit. Haruka. The disguised Hyuga stopped in mid-stride. This wasn't good, she had to think up some excuse. I know that you want to help me, said Hinata, and your advice to me was valuable. I appreciate the care you try to give me. But I want to do things my own way, and you are putting yourself at risk by defying the council and my father. Please do not interfere anymore. Haruka was at a loss for words for a moment. The way that Hinata had spoken to her was not decidedly unlike her, but there was something about it that felt alien to her. After a moment, she realized that this was what it felt like to be reprimanded by her leader. It was gentle and genuinely caring, as characterized the Hinata that Haruka knew, but the words had the force of law. In all her life, Haruka had never truly sworn allegiance to any leader. She had thought that all leaders found themselves inevitably corrupted in some way, or else could not keep control of all their subjects and fell to unhappy mobs. Yet, she found that she had never heard a command spoken by such a pure voice. She could not defy Hinata, did not even want to defy her, and could see no reason why anyone would want to. She inclined her head. As you wish, Hinata. So this is what it's like to serve under Hyuga Hinata, the next head of the Hyuga clan. Ooh, I know this man, said Neji. He is Captain Hiroto's personal aide. Keisuke had removed his sunglasses and was presently standing with one leg on the captive's chest with his body lit up by his flaming seal. When he spoke, his voice had the malice of the demons of law. He took special care to look and sound menacing, partially because he was annoyed at having his sleep time see into, and partially to help scare as much information as possible out of the captive Hyuga. Hiroto, said Keisuke, shooting an acidic look at the prisoner. Isn't that the name of the one who Naruto thrashed not long ago? It is, replied Neji. Does he serve the council, or is he in Hiyashi's pocket? Neji pondered a moment. I would like to think that he is loyal to Hiyashi-sama. He has always faithfully obeyed his commands. But Captain Hiroto is well known for his tendency to bypass regulations and do things by his own rules. I cannot say for sure that he is completely in anyone's camp. HMPH, Keisuke grunted. He looked down at his feet. What about you, little boy? Anything to say on your master's behalf? The young Hyuga on the ground was not comfortable in the presence of the eyeless shinobi. The empty sockets stared at him, seeming to draw him into their emptiness. The flames that crackled from the shining red seal written into his skin lit the alleyway with flickering, baleful light, and their heat burned his soul. The voice was full of contempt, giving him the impression that Keisuke had half a mind to murder him where he lay and would do it if he didn't get anything useful from him. To his credit, the young man's voice was admirably steady in the face of all this, and he did not tremble. However, his unease was blatantly apparent. Captain Hiroto does serve Hiyashi-sama humbly and without question. It is true that he believes some things ought to be done differently than Hiyashi-sama likes to do them, but he knows that it is not his place to dispute such matters. I like this guy, Keisuke said to Neji. Not the sniveling worm I expected. Is that how you have come to view the Hyuga, sir? Questioned the prisoner. Keisuke thought for a second. He often wondered himself what he thought of the Hyuga these days. More and more of them were earning his respect, beginning with Hinata and Haruka, then Neji, and now this young man. Not all, he admitted. But I certainly have trouble making the distinction between good Hyuga and bad at first meeting. I'm not terribly good at reading people until I hear them speak, you see. A moment of quiet, then the questions continued. What purpose were you following me for, spy? Answer truthfully, or I may decide that my liking of you was misplaced. Keisuke turned up the fire for added effect. Oppressed by the heat, the young Hyuga complied. Captain Hiroto wished me to observe you, specifically the manner in which you use your Rokujuon Ryude in a variety of situations. So Hiashi wants to know how to get around the ghostly arms, eh? I thought he would want to do his homework sooner or later. Actually, sir, said the captive, Captain Hiroto is not acting on Hiashi-sama's orders in this project. Are you certain? Asked Neji, kneeling down to peer into the man's eyes. The captive's eyes betrayed no lies. I am, Neji-senpai. Before I was dismissed, Captain Hiroto requested that I bring the information gathered only to him, and to allow it to fall into no one else's hands. Not Hiashi-sama, not the advisory council, not anyone else. He does not say why. Neji looked to Keisuke, affirmed that the young man was being truthful. Hiroto acting on his own. Keisuke thought aloud. He turned to Neji again. Is that unusual? Neji shook his head. It is not unlike the captain. He obeys orders when he is given them, but he has proven to be the type who will do what he pleases as long as he has not been ordered not to. For example, he was not ordered to avoid combat with Naruto when he was sent to recover Hinata-sama. And so he felt enled to a little fun and games, finished Keisuke with a shake of his head. I've never met the man, and already I don't like him. All kinds of characters in the Hyuga clan, aren't there? He favored the captive underfoot with a sadistic smile. Indeed, thought the young man grimly, and not a single one that has not been scarred in some way. How many Hyuga have been assigned to run surveillance on Hinata-sama? Asked Neji. Surveillance on Hinata-san? Questioned Keisuke. The last I know, she was going to keep her nose clean until Hiashi came around. Realizing that the blind man, who had been working at his mission for 18 hours and had no contact with the other members of the Hyuga Redemption Alliance, as Keisuke affectionately called it in his mind, Neji told him about Naruto's new mission. Keisuke laughed harder than he had in quite some time. What great irony. He finally managed to choke out between guffaws. They attempt to keep Naruto out of her life except for the purpose of shinobi business, and they wake up to discover that her life is shinobi business. It was a very welcome surprise, to be sure, said Neji. Then he turned back to the captive. How many? There were 2 branch sent by Hiashi-sama this morning, said the prisoner, but I have not been back to hear their report. The council gave no official assignments, but that is unsurprising, they prefer to keep the dealings secret. I suspect that their agents may or may not be Hyuga. Neji nodded. He was satisfied. Are you finished with him, Keisuke-san? I believe so, said the blind man. What do you want to do with him? Do you think he'll tell anyone you're in with me, Neji? I hope not. It would be a shame to have to case such a courageous, cooperative young man. Neji considered. The prisoner's tea tightened. No, Keisuke-san. If Hiroto were to suddenly decide that I am unfit for duty, then you would know who to come looking for. I do not think that he would like to have you suddenly appear on his doorstep one cold night, said Neji, throwing Keisuke a momentary grin. I suppose you're right, said Keisuke. Off you go then, young man. Give Hiroto a message from me. He can study the Ryude until his eyes burn out, as long as you're the one doing the spying. If I catch any more following me around like a swarm of gnats, I'll swat them. He lifted the foot from the young man's chest, doused his flames, and put his sunglasses on. The freed captive, though slightly confused at this strange message, decided not to question it. He bowed to Neji, then Keisuke, and disappeared. Neji turned to Keisuke. Is that wise, Keisuke-san? Letting Captain Hiroto gather information about your technique could have dire consequences. As long as Hiashi and his council don't know, I couldn't care less, Keisuke replied. If this Hiroto thinks he can be some kind of hero by defeating me, let him come. I'll make a martyr out of him. Neji made a guess. You want to test yourself against a Hyuga master. You want to see for yourself what kind of ground you can gain through might and skill. Keisuke nodded in response. Not only that, he said, but I have a personal grudge against this one for nearly my little brother. That and, his face became suddenly very grave, I have a bad feeling about him. Not working totally for Hiashi or the council, doing research on his own, it reeks of trouble. Neji did not answer. He had not suspected anything foul of his captain before, but not sharing his findings on the road with the clan head was very curious, and Neji wondered what his motives might be. Keisuke yawned. It was far past his bedtime. I've had enough excitement for one day. Did you call off for me? Hi, said Neji. Shikamaru has given you leave to sleep until 0400 tomorrow. Then you will begin your search of the environs around the Aberrane compound. All right, come get me at my house if you find anything. We will. Rest well, Keisuke-san. I'll be lucky if I do. With this news, Keisuke thought. Contrary to this pessimistic line of thought, his fatigue and the pattering of the rain on his roof lulled him to sleep quickly, and he had no trouble sleeping through the night. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.